Sati.
So we're actually on the last theme of today's conference, 50 Shades of Scale-Ups. And the title or the theme is Driving and Measuring My Metric for Success.
Driving and measuring my metric for success.
Yeah, it's big words, big words.
Could you translate them to normal English?
I can't, but I know somebody who can help us.
Ah.
So earlier today, you met Azran Osman-Rani, who's the former CEO of AirAsia X and of iflix, and now starting his own startup in health tech. So he is going to tee us off this afternoon.
Wonderful. So give Azran
topic.
a big applause. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for being our victim for the second time today, Azran. Me here? Yeah.
I was threatening to throw a pillow at her, and I haven't done that yet. So I'm going to use this opportunity when Sati sits down to throw a pillow at her.
Okay.
Because it's now still in a friendly motion.
It is. I'm just going to
And just threatening you, Azran, to give you up to speed, to tee us up on this difficult topic. When you hear this topic, what comes to your mind?
So I have a very strong view on what success means to me. But if you allow me to indulge, it comes from my weakest moments of failure on the brink of collapse.
Now, wait a minute. Okay. Weakest moment. Okay, please expand.
So before I talk in terms of why the definition of success, for me, why that definition matters, I want to give some context because just to share a little bit about the AirAsia X journey, right? We started in 2007. We raised $115 million on a business plan with no revenue. Because that was the year, remember Alan Greenspan said, irrational exuberance. There was a ton of money being thrown in. 6 months from launching, Bear Stearns collapsed, global credit crunch, all the banks who were lining up to give us loans for aircraft, they cited material adverse circumstance. There's a legal clause that says, too bad, I can pull out. And suddenly you have no loans, no ability to pay the banks. And then suddenly oil prices, your business plan was based on $75 a barrel. Suddenly it's going past 100. It eventually got to 147, double. You then learn, oh, I'm going to do fuel hedging because that's what everyone in the airline industry does. And so you lock fuel at $110 per barrel and you think, wow, it goes past $110. You're like, wow, this is easy money. The banks are paying me money because fuel is $120, $130, $140, and you think you're the shit. Suddenly what happens? From $147 a barrel in July 2008, it goes down to $32 a barrel by December 2008. And the amount that we would have to pay back the bank would have been 4 times our entire capital base, wiping out completely. And the only way we survived was just sheer dumb luck that the counterparty bank to that fuel hedging transaction was Lehman Brothers. And they collapsed before they could claim on us. Eventually later on, right, 6 years on, we IPO'd. We thought, wow, we did it. We validated the business model. We raised $300 million and we're going to expand, double our size. 6 months after the IPO, not 1, not 2, 3 black swan events. MH370, MH17, QZ851, boom, boom, boom. The share price completely tanked. Second worst IPO in corporate Malaysia history. Right? So everything that you raise, everything gone. And
so nobody talked to you anymore.
Nobody talked to me anymore. And by the way, there were intermediate points in that journey between 2008 and 2014 where, again, you completely run out of cash. You have, people, your accounts payables are almost 12 months. You have suppliers throwing letters of demands. You don't even have money for employee salaries.
I am already depressed. So where's this going?
Okay. And so at that point where you have nothing else to convince your suppliers why they need to believe in you because you have no other option, the only way you can connect with them, in this case, right, the one thing that an airline needs is fuel, right? Without fuel, gone. And our supplier Petronas said, too bad, you've got 7 days, we're going to stop supplying. which basically means you can't fly anymore because that's the fuel from Kuala Lumpur. And I literally went to the CEO of Petronas and I begged because I didn't have anything else. And I want to share how we connected, because he basically gave me 30 days, and that 30 days was what turned it around.
But he had first said 7 days.
His team said 7 days, right? After 90 days of not paying, right? They said 7 more days, we shut you down.
So how did that happen?
So this is where we connected because we talked about the core purpose. See, and this is why for me, today I'm a big believer in when we talk about success, it is not success to us as a company. So I'm very careful with things like, oh, we want to be $1 billion company. We want to be the #1 market leader in our company. We want to last 100 years as a business, because these are things that only you as a founder or maybe your shareholders get excited about. I doubt your employees get excited about, and I can guarantee your customers and your business partners don't get excited about it, right? But what can they connect with you is when they really understand what is it that you're doing that's going to make a big difference to people's lives, to society, right? And in AirAsia X specifically, right now, Tony talked about now everyone can fly, but that's very big, general, and abstract. And so we said, well, what does that mean? Well, it means if we want everyone to fly, number one, we have to be everywhere. We need to have planes that go to so many destinations so that people all have an opportunity. You need to be accessible to these people. Secondly, you have to be the most affordable, because otherwise people are not going to choose to fly with you. Third, you can be cheap, but if you're not reliable, don't hope that they're going to fly with you. And fourth, you might be cheap and you might be reliable, but if you're hard to use, you're not convenient, they're not going to come back and use you ever again. Now, these words, affordability, reliability, and convenience, the other way of talking about it is cost efficiency, right? But these things are all how we look at ourselves as a company. But the subtle way you rephrase it as, what's the benefit that you give other people? Because it's not about you saving money, but it's how do we make it as affordable for other people to benefit from your service, right? You are the most affordable airline, you're the most reliable airline, or you want to be the most convenient airline, and therefore these are things that employees and business partners get it. So all I had was just the ability to paint this picture of what we want it to be, of the people who wouldn't be able to afford to fly to these places had it not been for what we are and what we want to be. And that was the story that connected. The employees who stayed even when they didn't get paid for 3 months were the ones who stayed because they got it. They got that we were in a business, not because we wanted to be #1 or not because we wanted to be a big business, but because we wanted to make a difference. And that difference became clear when you could articulate how are you making that difference. Because you're creating an airline that makes it more affordable than anyone else before you, that is more reliable, that's more convenient.
What helped? Well, this is an amazing story. Wow. So that's how you survived. Impressive. Thank you. I was getting so depressed, so I'm back up again. What helped you realize that? Is that something you knew from childbirth when you were a little boy? Or what helped you realize? Because we have heard today other entrepreneurs talk about the greatness and the bigness of their business, of what they want to achieve, and not the impact. So,
you know what? I think the only thing that helped me realize that earlier was that 6 months into my journey, my ego got completely bashed up. Because in 2007, I was that ego-driven founder that, wow, we raised $115 million on a business plan. We've got bankers lining up to give us loans. Poof, growth in 4 months, launch. And then suddenly the world just kicks you in the nuts and you fall down, right? And then just when you get up again, you get crushed again, and you get crushed again, and you get crushed again. And you start to realize, what's the reason? It's one thing for us to be able to get up, but how do you tell the story to get other people who you need to get up with you, and you sort of learn different stories don't connect with them, right? So what are the stories that are going to connect and get them to feel, I'm in this journey with you. I'm going to get up with you. I'm going to keep going when we keep getting knocked down. And you realize the power of the story is important. And therefore, what story, what emotions are going to connect with people at your weakest moments, that brink of failure, is when you realize how you can establish connection, that it's not, there's a bigger purpose.
Just also to, thank you for sharing. Just also to check this, because I hear you say, if you don't have that metric that resonates deeply almost in your stomach, you cannot bring it over to your employees and to your customers. When your company grows, that loosens.
And your business partners. And by the way, this is something you realize, you've got to keep engaging them when times are good, because suddenly when you haven't paid them for 6 months and you want to talk to them about values and purpose, they're going to tell you go fly a kite, right? Because it's not going to be genuine. But if it's part of the dialogue and the conversation, and they kind of get it that, you're doing this not because, you're trying to be some hotshot number one in your business, but because you're part of what they're also wanting to do. Because everybody wants to be a positive contributor to society.
In sports,
Yep.
people talk, and you're a big sportsman. I hear you do a lot.
Recreationally.
Well, in sports, people a lot speak about the outer game and the inner game.
Right.
And just to check, this sounds a little bit like the outer game. Could you share a little bit with us, a little bit about your inner game? What allows you to do this as a person, or what goes on in struggling for you as a person inside? Could you reveal or help us understand?
I think it's also, it's a good point, because defining an intrinsic motivation, it's that thing that keeps you going when physically you've just completely exhausted yourself, and you need to find and draw on that reserves that don't exist, that you never thought existed. And in my case, the thing that keeps coming back to me is, what will my kids think of me? What kind of role model do I want to be? What kind of values do I want to impart? Do I want to tell them about giving up? Or do I want to tell them, no matter how far down you think you are, right, there's always going to be light at the end of the tunnel.
So those deepest moments before you went to that CEO, you were imagining what 2 stories you might tell your kids?
Sure. Every time I do my triathlons,
Yes.
I get them to write their names on my hands using a marker pen, because 180 kilometers on your bike, it gets very boring, right? And so you kind of want to see the messages and the names of your kids on a permanent marker pen on your hands.
Wow.
Because it keeps reminding you that this is the reason why you're doing it, that you don't want to kind of quit halfway and just tell your kids, yeah, it was tough, I quit.
Thank you for sharing. Wow. Give him applause. All those with kids, write markers, do triathlons. Wow. You have?
So I have a question. So I watched an interview with Azran on YouTube. It was really interesting. You said something like, and correct me if I'm wrong, you said, don't do long-term planning. Because if you do long-term planning, then you're in a danger of creating a tunnel vision, and therefore you miss out on all the different nuances and opportunities and other things that may arise on your path towards your goal. So it feels a bit counterintuitive for me, because I have always been told that to achieve your vision, you need to plan.
Okay. So
can you share a bit
again,
more?
This is coming from, every time I've put a detailed plan together, it never comes through. So I talked a little bit about AirAsia X. I'm going to talk a little bit about iflix. We put this very detailed business plan which said, okay, we're going to offer everybody a 30-day free trial, and then after that, they're going to sign up with credit card and online banking payments, because that's what the other players did. And so we launched. And then within a few months, we realized the only people who were converting from the 30-day free trial to a paid subscription were my own friends and family. Everyone else didn't want to pay for iflix. Suddenly, your entire business plan, all your revenue models were out the window within a few months of being launched. What happened, right? And was it payment channels? Maybe because people don't want to pay with credit cards or online banking. You know, we said, look, what's the most prevalent payment channel for e-commerce in Southeast Asia?
Nikki?
Cash on delivery, right? Now with iflix, we're not giving you a physical good, right? And it's only like 30,000 rupiah. So we actually sent guys on motorcycles to go collect your $2. It cost us more than $2 to pay for the guy to go because we wanted to test, was it a payment channel? Was it a payment convenience issue? And they still didn't want to pay. But then I realized, a few guys came up to me and said, oh, thank you for introducing iflix. We love your service. I'm on my 4th free trial. So he figured how to hack iflix. Every 30-day free trial, I just sign up with a new email address, new mobile phone. I get another 30-day free trial, another 30-day free trial. They loved using it. They just didn't like the idea of paying for content.
Yeah.
Because if I'm going to have to pay for content, I might as well just BitTorrent it. And so your entire business model goes down the toilet. Now, we eventually figured out, well, if people want to use it, but they didn't want to pay for it, let's find someone else who will benefit from people using iflix. And that's where the telco relationships came in. That wasn't part of the original business plan because we convinced telcos, hey, someone who uses iflix consumes 2 additional gigabytes of data a month. That 2 gigabytes of additional data is worth X incremental revenue for you. I'll sell you iflix at a wholesale rate that's less than that. So it's like, give your customers a free car and then sell gasoline, right? And that required just complete creativity. The problem with planning is that if you believe this is the plan, this is what I need to do, the world moves in ways that you cannot predict. It changes so fast that you get trapped into this tunnel vision because you're so focused, this is what my plan says I'm supposed to do.
So we stop planning.
Yeah. So instead, here's the thing.
You know, I have a consulting background. This hurts. This hurts deeply.
Okay.
So I give you 5 seconds to reconsider your comment.
So what other organizations do in a year, we do it in 30 days. Because every 30 days, you need to go back and look and say, what has changed in the world? What new piece of information? What do I need to learn and adjust? And you're literally moving on that 30-day cycle. But if you define that big purpose, that is your North Star. Because that doesn't change. But how you get there will change in ways that you cannot possibly imagine because new technology comes up that we can't even imagine today. Customer preferences, you couldn't anticipate that they would behave that way, right? So you've got to have that flexibility that every 30 days, plans completely change, but the reason for being, the reason why your employees are with you, the reason why your business partners are with you, that doesn't change.
So how then do you make sure, because the world changed so much now, and sometimes the reason for being when you started with your company also disappear or change. So how do you deal with not only less planning, but your purpose over time may change because you don't know where the world is heading?
I think that doesn't change. It certainly doesn't change on a 30-day cycle or an annual cycle. Maybe at a different phase, 10 years from now it might change, but I don't, if your core purpose is a true North Star, by definition it's not going to waver. It is specifically how will people's lives be impacted.
Right.
I really like what you're saying, but if my wife would today, and I think she's even here, so this is a dangerous comment, but if my wife would ask me, Raul, what is your purpose in life? I would struggle to say. Does it mean I have to, well, what do I do with myself?
So let me, so this is something someone, as I was trying to discover this for myself, what I would tell you is try to define 10 roles about yourself now that you think matter to you. That you're a husband, that you're an Endeavor board member, whatever it is that are your roles, and then figure out through maybe a conjoint process, what are the top 2 or 3 roles, and then why they matter to you. I think if you went through that exercise, especially talking and articulating with others, it starts to become really, really clear because you first have to define what are the 10 things that I define myself as, And then now I've got to make trade-offs, right? If you keep pairing two different options, eventually you'll get a prioritized list. And then it becomes clearer to you, okay, well, I chose this. Why are those roles important to you? And you start getting into the why, I think the purpose starts to come out.
Wow. Did you ever do it that structured? When was the first time?
I don't know, 7, 8 years ago.
Wow. So your advice would be for us to start that much earlier? Is it something you do with a friend over a beer, or is it?
So Svida knows, I think part of YPO, it's an organization that I think encourages leadership through reflection and sharing. Because as a business leader, it's an incredibly lonely position. Because you always have to be guarded, right? I have to be a certain way with my shareholders and my board. I have to be a certain way with my employees. So where's the safe space that you can sort of expose that vulnerability? And organizations like YPO kind of give you that safe space, a group of peers who are in similar leadership positions as you, in a very structured way, allowing you to kind of discover both the reasons for you being, the vulnerabilities that you have. And I think it's that self-reflections that I think, as you think about what makes you weak, that probably becomes your source of strength.
Thank you. I think there's a question.
Yeah, this is a question from the audience because we're going to show it here. It's from Victor Longway. His question is, how do you establish metrics in a position or a role which has no prior benchmark?
How do you establish metrics? Okay, just a personal philosophy. I don't believe in cascading KPIs down to individual people because I fear, and from experience, it creates silos. I'm only focused on this metric. I don't care about what that department does. I only look at this. So it was important that everybody had a common set of metrics that sink or swim, we've got to be focused on the affordability and reliability and convenience or whatever those metrics are, and you share that. You might have different, as an operations person, I might be more focused on the cost or affordability part rather than the front-end customer experience. But I'm very, very careful. I get very nervous when people say, oh, my role is just this metric.
So how do you ensure accountability then in that sort of structure?
So what we've done, and for better or worse, we've moved away from individual KPIs and performance rankings and trying to pigeonhole people into, oh, you are below expectations, meet expectations, above expectations. You get 3 months bonus, you get 2 months bonus, you get 1 month bonus, because nobody is ever satisfied with that process. It doesn't drive performance. So instead, we said, look, scrap all of that. Every 30 days, let's focus on a development conversation rather than an evaluation conversation. A development conversation is, what are you doing well? How else are you going to change? How are you going to grow, right? And as far as consequence, either everybody generally gets the same bonus or reward depending on how well the company does, or the 5 or 10% who are superstars, they get rewarded because they get bumped up, higher opportunities, higher comp. And the ones who are struggling, as a startup, we don't have the luxury of giving you 6 months to turn around. We're going to say, thank you very much, but you might be better served in a different organization. That's it. But rather than trying to kind of come up with this differential bonus and ranking, so much angst and frustration, nobody is happy with the process, yet companies keep doing that because everybody seems to be doing that. So, we just sort of step back and think, why bother?
So right? That's what you're now doing in your startup?
Absolutely.
Does
so
it
no
work?
plans and no metrics for...
No. A very clear set of metrics, 4 or 5 metrics about what makes this business tick. But everybody owns those metrics. Because if I only say I'm only focused on one, it very quickly gets into silo mentality and, I don't want to help you out on this project because that's not my KPI. It gets territorial, very quickly a company goes from 3 or 5 people who are so aligned to 30 people who only care about their own areas.
And do you think this works across industries that you're in?
So far,
Okay.
only because I've seen the points where we've been broken. When we had those traditional performance metrics, when we cascaded KPI, we saw behaviors that were just not healthy. People act in their self-interest. And when you define, this is your role, this is your scope, this is your KPI, that's all they focus on.
And also across cultures, Philippine, Malay, Indonesian, German, American, French,
Yeah.
even the French. Okay. We have got a few French people here. Hello, I love France. I love France.
Okay, so Raul, the last question. I'll hand it up to you.
Well, the last question is very much, I think, the one that we've been asking a lot. If you want to share it, how would you define your purpose in life?
So besides what I shared this morning, I've looked back and I think the thing that gives me the most energy is kind of celebrating giving young people an opportunity to be far ahead of where I am today. One of my biggest moments, just to share kind of a personal anecdote, AirAsia X IPO roadshow. New York was the 6th of 7 cities. I'm completely exhausted after 2 weeks of doing 100 presentations to investors. The investment bank takes us to this hedge fund in New York. And the managing partner, Sue Kim, very generic name, right? I come in, and then next thing you know, this Sue Kim woman walks in, and she goes, "Hi, Azran, it's me, Sue." And she runs up to me, giggling, and gives me a big hug. And all the bankers and everyone looks at this going, what is going on? This is a managing partner of a $1 billion hedge fund behaving like a giggly school kid. She was my business analyst when I was at McKinsey in Seoul in 2001, which was 12 years before that. She worked on my team. I wrote her Harvard MBA. She went from Seoul to Harvard to running a hedge fund, a $1 billion hedge fund in New York. I couldn't have been more prouder.
Wonderful. Thank you for that story. Thank you for your time. Give him a big applause.
Thank you, Azran.
Thank you for postponing your flight and being here today with us.